My name is Henrique Teixeira, and this is Identity Security. Ride the AI wave with confidence. Today, I'm going to be talking about butterflies. Yes, this is about mythos and glasswing. And if you know me, you know I like analogies, and I wanted to dig deeper and understand why they chose this name and the whole glasswing thing. So, as with this butterfly, the wings are transparent. Same as with vulnerabilities. When you're using software and application, you don't actually see those vulnerabilities. And at the same time, apparently those wings are quite resistant. So the whole point was protecting this. I don't know about you, if you think this is hype, reality. I think it's a mix of both. But one thing is for sure. AI is forcing and reshaping what identity means to us today. Excitement, but also at the same time some pessimism on AI adoption. So there's a lot of the risks that we hear about mythos, for example, this model being so powerful that it's not ready for human consumption. And it is quite alarming. But there's other elements going on right now in our industry, like socioeconomic, geopolitical tensions, the challenge of identifying or visualizing risks, especially non-human type of risks, and identities that are now agentic. There's the whole challenge of disinformation security, more than just deepfakes and what AI can pose in terms of dark AI or attacks using AI, but think, for example, the challenge of checking for intent of an agent. And last, how can we cope with this hybrid intelligence, humans and machines collaborating and working together? So all those forces are changing the way we see identity, the way organizations are looking at identity. And one thing that we've been clamoring for decades, and that's as long as I am in this industry, is that identity deserves to be in the center of cybersecurity. So we got to be careful what we wish for, because we not only got a seat at that table, perhaps we got the biggest seat. So if you are an identity practitioner in this era of AI, and if we look of all the changes that are happening in our industry, yes, the other domains of cybersecurity remain very important. But in order to provide proper controls on endpoint security and network security, even in cloud security, you're going to be using a lot of the identity context for prevention, for detection and response, but also for the foundational elements of identity. For example, the security of posture management of identity, lifecycle management and governance, and threat detection of identity-based type of attacks. All those things combined provide the context, the risk analysis that is more identity-based through interchanging of signals with those other disciplines in cybersecurity. So instead of relying on IP addresses or relying on a fingerprint of what device you're using, it's more about the context of the identity requesting or doing something in your environment. So if you are a leader today, you may be feeling that pressure, as many other leaders are. The pressure of adopting AI very quickly, but at the same time, not making mistakes, which is very difficult. So you may be feeling like this person here. So hey, move fast, but don't make mistakes. And one thing when we think about AI is not just an application in your phone, right? So it's not just like ChatGPT installed on an Apple or an Android device. AI becomes this whole layer. It's a whole new attack surface, this whole new abstraction layer on top of cloud. So yes, AI is a wave that came after this big wave of cloud. Cloud is already 25, 26 years old. Yes, the first cloud application, Salesforce, was launched in the year 2000. So yes, cloud is not new. But guess what? Cloud is still around, and cloud infrastructure is what sustains AI. All the AI workloads, all this new abstraction layer runs on top of cloud. This will be important for us to remember. And when we look at this new attack surface? How do we protect it? So what I recommend leaders today, leaders that are cloud first, leaders that are AI first, we got to think of a way of an operating system for this AI era. Identity, as we saw, is the most efficient control. They'll be interconnected with all the other cybersecurity elements here. And there are three major pillars in this, what I call the operating system for resilience in this AI era. First, we gotta see, because we cannot manage what we cannot see. So the visibility, the discovery, operation of this new attack surface starts with the visibility. What's the posture of my whole attack surface? Do I know all the identity types that exist there? All the static non-human identities, all the workforce identities, all the external identities, all the agentic identities. Then adaptability, how fast can I adapt and change my controls, onboarding, offboarding these identities? If it's a non-human identity, can I very quickly associate that identity with a human, an owner? And last, we establish trust. If we have a pillar of visibility and adaptability, we can deliver trust to our clients, trust to our employees, trust to our partner. So let's dive deeper into the trends that are shaping this new era. Okay, we're in 2026, right? We're midway, and there are 5 big things here that I want to touch. Very, very important themes, but this is just a highlight, perhaps the best of, if you will, a summary of the things leaders must be thinking about as they progress throughout the rest of this year and get ready for surfing this wave of AI with confidence. So number 1 is Platformization 2.0. Platformization is, and why I say 2.0 is because this is different, okay? This is the promise of a single pane of glass. We heard that before. Last year alone, there was more than 16 different acquisitions in the identity space, over $26 billion of M&A in this industry. And you saw throughout the year, just this week, last week, week after week, new M&As in identity. Why this is happening? Well, 80% of you, 80% of organizations are telling me and the industry that they want to simplify, they want to have this consolidated view of things. What I recommend when I speak with my clients, when I speak with leaders today adopting this consolidation of platforms is that pause, think about what you need, choose what makes sense. For example, IGA with privileged access management, that makes total sense to be converged. Endpoint with SIEM, for example, that makes sense to be converged. So just take a look of the things that make sense to be converged, and yes, go ahead and simplify that. That makes a lot of sense. Number 2, rise of the MCP. MCP has been perhaps the most successful protocol that I've seen being adopted in technology ever. I think the speed of this, I think Anthropic launched this in the end of 2024, and it almost sounds legacy. Let me repeat that. It was 2024 this thing was invented, and it almost sounds legacy because it was so quick that everything spread out and adopted by our industry. For me, MCP is a very similar situation that we lived with APIs. When cloud was the wave that we were surfing, APIs was the element that enabled connectivity and interoperability for those SaaS and IaaS type of applications. In the AI era, MCP is the API for agents to talk to each other, to LLMs to talk to agents, and to humans to talk to agents. So MCP becomes this protocol for interoperability. Now, Anthropic was very clear. When they launched this protocol, they said, it's up to you, leader. It's up to you. It's up to developers and builders to protect MCP. So my suggestion, avoid the past mistakes. What I mean by that, when we adopted cloud and SaaS applications, we used a lot of API keys, OAuth tokens, and those things just multiplied in our environment. That created a problem for us to manage those type of static type of credentials. So be careful when you are creating an MCP server, when you're creating a new agent, avoid the past mistakes of creating those static credentials. Avoid creating tokens written inside env files, for example. Next one, modern machine identity. So speaking about static credentials, we got to do something else. So what do we use instead of static credentials written in plain text in text files? Use this. So SPIFFE and Spire, those are ways to implement ephemeral dynamic credentials for AI. Not only AI, for other things as well, for machines, for app-to-app communication. Statistics are showing us that 70% of secrets, 70% of them are still available or alive in 2025, which means we are not rotating those secrets. So a secret is a password, for example. And unlike human passwords that we typically rotate often, or at least once a year, those are static because we are afraid if we change those machine credentials, we may break something like a service account. We rarely rotate passwords of service accounts. And when we ask leaders today, less than 10% of those leaders, they have a mature non-human identity strategy for dealing with those secrets. So my suggestion here is, number one, contain the problem. If we are building new applications, new AI agents, we gotta avoid creating them using those static credentials. We gotta use dynamic things like using SPIFFE, for example, to issue ephemeral and reusable tokens that are more dynamic. And for the legacy, right, the apps that we created over decades of SaaS, we got to start migrating them, retrofitting those apps to remove static credentials and use something more dynamic, okay? So be aggressive by reducing and containing, and then going back to your legacy and fixing that. The next one, visibility. Many industry analysts, they're talking about this. Gartner, they coined a new acronym called IVIP, Identity Visibility and Intelligence Platforms. So this is all about understanding digital assets. ISPM, Identity Security Posture Management, at Saviynt, that's the name of the product that Saviynt has for that visibility, discovering where those identity assets exist, assets like a machine identity or an AI agent identity or a human identity or a privileged identity. So discovering where those things are is difficult because you could be running an agent on a desktop, and that's what we call shadow AI. How do we know where they're running? How do we know where they exist? My suggestion here is to start with the identity data. When we detect something is running on a desktop or it's running inside Amazon Bedrock or inside of Google Vortex, is it supposed to be there? Number one. And number two, what's the identity? And if there's no identity associated with that machine, we create that identity and we associate that identity with a human. So start with the identity data. Creating an identity is a representation, a digital representation for that instantiation of a program that is running, right? But also be very realistic. Assess your own capabilities of discovering this type of machines with visibility, right? So is your organization standardized in one type of platform for agent platforms or SaaS platforms? So start there. I think as we are realistic about our ability to discover, to onboard applications, we're going to be perhaps measuring ourselves or setting ourselves for success more easily. Automate as much as we can the discovery and the onboarding of those apps, but also be relentless and continue to expand that integration. And last but not least, the AI governance. I think this picture is very telling, and I think it's a great analogy. When I speak with colleagues in this industry, and when we think of AI agents or machine identities, they look like this. Robots roaming our network, roaming the internet with a lanyard in their necks, carrying their badge, their identity, which can be easily stolen. Different from humans, right? Because when something's going on with a human, we can raise our hands and say, hey, there's something wrong. I think my account was compromised. But with machines, they can't. And that's why most attacks today, they're focusing on machines, they're focusing on identities that are non-human, because those take longer for us to detect. It takes longer for us to even notice something's wrong with that identity. We gotta be very careful on the governance of those machines. When we ask our Saviynt clients or other leaders, identity leaders and CISOs, 90% tell us, yes, we are working on it. We're working on the governance of those AI agents. 60%, or that means more than half of people that we speak to, they say, well, it's kind of difficult. And a third is telling us that the challenge is severe, just to wrap their heads around this problem. My suggestion here is to be very, very pragmatic. Expand your human identity program. So if you have already an IAM program for workforce, for external users, expand that today. Say, hey, I have a new mandate. We got to include machines. We got to include AI agents. Number one. That's number one. And apply the least privilege type of principles that you have today for humans to those machines. So a machine should never be carrying long-standing privileges. So just-in-time type of approaches is recommended here. The same way we have with humans. Now there are tools that can provide you what we call JIT, right? Just-in-time access to things. So adopt more of that so we can, when we have those machines running around our networks, if they get compromised, the blast radius is contained to what they can touch. So we spoke about those 5 big elements here that is shaping. And this is not predictions, okay? Those are things happening right now. And I'll leave you with 5 recommendations to surf this wave, surf this AI wave, which is a wave, by the way. I can promise you, this is not the last wave, but yes, it's perhaps the most impactful wave that we've seen so far. So when you're looking at the single pane of glass, rationalize those consolidation of technologies in cyber, which is a good thing, but think about the clusters of vendors that make sense to be rationalized. Number 2, don't replicate the mistakes we made with all the API keys for SaaS, for MCP. Okay, so when you're creating MCP, use ephemeral tokens and contain this static machine identities to propagate. Number 4, solve this visibility intelligence challenge that we have today. Discover the identity data that's around. And right now, this is something you can do today. Talk with your peers and extend your IAM programs to include those machines, to include those AI agents. My name is Henrique Teixeira from Saviynt. I'm very happy to be here today. So thank you. It was my pleasure. Have a good day.